Hello and welcome to the light bulb, where you will find latest and greatest informative videos about world. In this video, we will talk about 10 greatest inventions of all time in the history. Number 1. The wheel. The wheel is everywhere, but interestingly historians say the first wheels were not used for transportation. Evidence shows that the first wheels were potter's wheels that were created around 3500 BC in Mesopotamia. They were used for chariots about 300 years later. Number 2. The printing press. Before Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press and movable type in the early 1400s. Books or other documents were generated by hand. Once the printing press mechanized bookmaking, the number of books grew exponentially to 20 million volumes by 1500, and then upwards of 200 million just 10 years later. This explosion of books drove literacy and the spread of knowledge around the globe. Number 3. The plow. The plow allowed for the soil to be more easily turned so that the nutrients buried several inches underground would be brought closer to the surface. While at the same time burying the grass and vegetation which would decompose and in turn provide more nutrients to whatever crops were planted. When pulled by an animal, a plow greatly improved food production. Number 4. Cement. The invention of cement allowed for everything from pottery, housing and canals. It's been described as the bond that held civilization together. Number 5. The steam engine. I've written about the steam engine previously, as think of it like the dawn of the industrial age. Invented by James Watt in 1781, the steam engine was initially a relatively small 10 horsepower engine, that within a dozen years grew 1,000-fold to 10,000 horsepower. Which is basically the doubling of HP every year. I just did it on a napkin, and that's Moore's law. Number 6. Penicillin. One of the first drugs to be used against disease, penicillin has improved and saved countless lives. Although penicillin was discovered by Scottish scientist and Nobel laureate Alexander Fleming in 1928, it proved very difficult to produce in quantities until the mid-1940s. In fact, the first patient was treated with US-made penicillin from Merck in 1942, and that single patient used half of the total supply produced. Eventually, the production process was sorted out, and the US produced 646 billion units per year in 1945. Number 7. The radio. Marconi patented the radio a few years before 1900. But it wasn't until the 1920s that it worked well enough to be used as a medium for news and entertainment. Although the telegraph allowed for immediate communication over long distances, The radio provided the ability to effectively communicate with huge numbers of people directly by voice. Number 8. The lens. The invention of an optical lens allowed the unseen to be seen, and therefore the unknown to be known. What was previously invisible to the naked eye? Whether microscopic organisms or distant stars, all were made visible by the invention of the lens. Number 9. The telephone. As with many inventions, the telephone was developed by several different people that each made contributions. The telephone made voice communication possible, and that resulted in lessening the distance between people. It also lets you talk to your mom when you're far away, and say love you mom. Number 10. The airplane. If you have the chance, you should visit Kill Devil Hill in North Carolina. That's where in 1903 the Wright brothers first flew a controlled heavier-than-air powered flight. Out among the grassy sand fields, the distances of their first few flights are shown with markers. There's a model of the Wright Flyer and of their modest cabins where they lived and worked during their visits from Ohio to North Carolina, where they made repeated attempts to fly. It's hallowed ground. Hard to believe that just a little more than 50 years later, Boeing introduced the 707. And just 66 years after the Wright brothers first flew, in 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Hallowed ground indeed.